I've been writing this for several months now, so hopefully it's quite good. Right. I shall be brief. A quality David never possessed. I only wish to speak of my best friend, who enhanced all of our lives. I have the sense that he would be highly irritated to be eulogized. With this in mind, I will proceed to irritate his immortal soul. My sole impression of David is confined to this. I divide people into two categories: life enhancers and life not enhancers. This was a rare occasion when David's anecdotal prowess deserted him. However, it was an exception. We gathered to celebrate this colourful and gorgeous man. Advance apologies, I speak from the heart. David Johnson was the most profound influence on me. I met David when I was 18, literally half my life ago. I immediately sensed that he was a bad influence for a young Oxford man. And so when I was admitted, his friendship was more important than my degree, arguably. David's tutelage was more valuable than any lecture. I met him at the Union, where we are standing now, every day. It was a proper education in villainy. It was a terribly bad idea, which I pursued like a heat-seeking missile. And as we know, David generated heat, light, and magnetism. To be allowed into the blast radius of this turbulent priest, well, here is now it happened, and have never regretted it. I first saw David at an emergency debate in Michaelmas 2003. I had never seen such a person in my life. I couldn't imagine how I could become friends with a man like that, because even though I was a bit posh and a bit pretentious, he was on a different planet. It took about a day. I actively groomed him to be my best pal at the Union. He was my mentor. He came to see every play I acted in and every play I wrote. He was scabrously critical of all of them. But I knew to expect horrible invective because I knew he loved me. We talked about literature and history, which I should have been reading in the library, and we tried to be funny to each other. We adored every minute of badinage and mutual recrimination. We insulted each other in creative ways. I looked forward every day to getting into an abstruse row with him about something minor, like whether correct vestments were worn at Holy Mass, or hearing him in a splenetic rage about something at library committee. At my 21st birthday, he gave a speech saying, "Cochrane's arty friends call him Vinny, which is a Celtic word for disgustingly mouldy bread." It was fun. Why? Because the man was a rogue, a renegade, an habitual contrarian, his wit equal to every circumstance, and yet full of compassion and self-caricature. He was willing to take the mickey out of himself because he realized that everyone else might beat him to the punch. David could be horrendously pompous to the naked eye, but in fact, he was sweet and vulnerable. David was not, as many obituaries have said, the last of a dying breed of Oxbridge eccentrics. Certain papers took the obvious route by portraying him as a character barfly, such as one might see in a war novel. That strikes me as very surface level stuff. David was not like that. He just loved to be loved. He was allergic to boredom and was never boring himself. That's the biggest lie I've told today. Those of our number who knew him closely would have seen such moral intactness in David, One suspects that he was occasionally thought somewhat odd. Really? To be a storyteller and a bon viveur and also a minister of the divine may imply disjunction. However, I aver that David was my closest confidant and helped me at all times and in all circumstances. He was the first chap to comfort me when my father died. He was also the first to insult me repeatedly and relentlessly when he found out a certain aspect of me, which some of you may know. I'll give you 3 guesses. But David was a deeply spiritual, morally sound man and a consummate minister of God. He and his spiritual alter ego, who Tim mentioned in his wonderful speech earlier, Francis Wagstaff of the East Riding, I believe, never wavered from the project of Christianity. I had just done my prelims, and my elderly mother, who is now 83, by the way, was visiting Oxford. David took her out to lunch. Guess who paid? and said something I will never forget. Young Vinny has joined a new family, and he will never be deserted. He was right. And that single impulse expresses David Johnson's attitude to general life. It breaks my heart to think that we cannot sit with him anymore in the Bear or the Union, expounding on past glories when he was at Cambridge, which I think you know were extensive. To return to what I said before about his comment to my mother, I suppose that we were all his cobbled together family. David was a collector of people, and it mattered not a whit from what background you emerged. He was a man of constant jest, and like the finest in all humanity, a man who loved everything he looked on and made fun of it. I think someone said, somewhat acidly, he had a human zoo. Everyone here assembled were happy inmates in David's prison. When I think of Oxford, my favourite place, I cannot help but think of David. He taught me how to be a human. I am not exaggerating. He encouraged me towards every mistake, but also every triumph. His influence upon all of us is beyond calculation, and whatever quirks he may have frustrated us, he is an indelible influence upon his friends and also the church. David was the most infuriating and beautiful person I have ever known. Form an orderly queue to supplant him, you could wait forever. He was Oxford for me. By way of conclusion, yes, I said I'd be brief. David would not want us to grieve for him, although we do. Actually, he would want us to do impressions of him, as I have, crying tears into fully charged glasses in a spirit of love and friendship. After all, those are the qualities he stimulated in every person assembled here today. It is not only me or us who have been bereaved. It is not Oxford or Cambridge. It is not the church. It is not anything excepting the memory of our great friend David. For the rest of my life, I will not forgive him for passing away. The time of his life would never have been enough to spread amongst us all, but he tried manfully. I know that the Reverend Father David Johnson has already been laid in earth, but my fondest hope is that he can tell his scandalous stories in heaven. God will never be bored and has infinite Guinness. If David cannot rest in peace, I am confident he will make a lot of noise. I would love to hear his Dalek-flavoured voice again. Requiescat in pace, my best ever friend, David Johnson. Thank you.